Hey everyone, welcome to Youth Bombs. I'm Craig.
I'm Holden.
And I'm Olivia.
And we're the voice of young conservatives in Alachua County, looking at the Democrats' plan for zero emissions by 2050. Absolutely ridiculous plan, not feasible whatsoever. They don't care. Holden, what is their general vision for this?
Yeah, I mean, you said it exactly, which is they want zero emissions by 2050, and that would virtually completely get rid of all hydrocarbon burning in the United States, which would be absolutely horrific. That's about over 80% of our energy comes from hydrocarbons. This whole podcast experience is possible because of hydrocarbons at a cost-effective way. And it's just going to throw a bunch of people in poverty. That's what's going to happen if they actually go through on this. I like to think that this isn't going to happen, but it's a serious goal for very influential people throughout the world. And I don't think that people really quite understand how important burning of hydrocarbons really is to the United States economy and all economies across the world, but especially in developed countries. Almost every developed country, more than 75% of their energy comes from hydrocarbons.
Mm-hmm. Right. And we know Kamala wants to ban fracking. She'll waffle on it a bit, but Pennsylvania, look at her record. She opposes it. It's going to be a disaster for the economy. Lots of put out jobs, and they think, oh, well, we'll just replace everything with solar and wind, which are much, much, much less efficient, much more expensive, and it's just not practical. Who's going to pay for this? What's going to happen to all the power plant workers in the coal plants and natural gas plants? It's going to be a disaster for jobs, but they don't care because they see, oh, you know what? The world is fundamentally at risk from quote-unquote climate change. It's not. We'll be fine. Every 10 years they say, oh, you know what? Miami's going to be underwater in 10 years, and every time they're wrong. So clearly they're going to be wrong again. We don't need to hit zero emissions, and frankly, looking at the temperature of the Earth, historically, it's been warmer than it is now, and it's been colder than it is now. We'll be fine. Olivia, what do you think?
Yeah, well, to speak about the climate change thing, I mean, like, if you look at the actual numbers from it, from, like, scientists who are completely apolitical who have, like, studied this, I mean, the percentage is, like, 0.00 something percent.
It's 1 degree Celsius over the last 180 years since we've been burning hydrocarbons.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
It's about 160 years, but yeah.
Exactly.
It's gone up 1 degree Celsius.
Exactly, yeah. So, I mean, just looking at the actual numbers, not looking at the politics, looking at the emotions, you can see that it's not as an imminent problem as these people are making it out to seem. As far as like all these regulations and the zero emissions thing, I've heard some professors at University of Florida in the economics department, they're like, oh, like in the short-term effect, it's going to create all these shocks, you know, with like the unemployment and, you know what I mean, and all the regulations, and it will reduce output, reduce productivity. But in the long run, the regulation is just going to be like a framework for even more economic innovation. However, it's completely against our, you know, American culture and constitution to put all these regulations on these companies, especially when it's not really rooted in anything that is really needed. One, as we look at the numbers from climate change, and two, if it's not broke, you know, don't try to fix it. I mean, we're running, like how you said, like most developed countries run off of this type of energy.
Oh, all of them, yeah.
And if we're to get rid of it, that means we're going to collapse our economy.
Yeah.
So basically, and this doesn't take a lot of like research to look into. This is like basic economic theory. This is like basic critical reasoning. It's easy to look for this information for climate change. So these politicians have this information at hand. So I really think that they're just trying to say that, you know, this is like an easy way to play on people's emotions. Like, oh, the world's ending. Let's do these zero emission, you know, whatnot, green energy deal, this. But really, they want people to vote for that. And they just want to, you know, just say like, hey, you know, America has had its time as being like the number one economy, number one nation. Let's find a reason to, you know, knock it down a little bit because they don't believe in our country.
Well, frankly, we're safer from the climate than we ever have been. Climate-related deaths over the last 100 years are down 50-fold. 50-fold. We're far safer. And a lot of that is actually the case because we're able to burn hydrocarbons and use cost-effective energy. Like for protecting ourselves against hurricanes, we're better than ever. We're better than ever at that stuff. We have less per capita mortalities. It's not even close. Like, we're just so much better at dealing with this than we used to be. A lot of people used to die from climate-related effects, like drought deaths are down 99% over the last 100 years because we have high-powered, irrigation systems. They're powered by hydrocarbons. So what we're facing right now is the world is unnaturally livable. Like, the world naturally is not livable. The climate is a very dangerous place, but because we've impacted it, we're far safer from the climate than we ever have been, and that's just a fact. So if they really want to, make what's really going to be a problem if we stop burning hydrocarbons, we're really going to be much more. We're going to be much less safe from the climate than we already are right now. So I wouldn't like to see that from a human flourishing perspective. That's horrible.
Yeah, exactly. And like, speaking to like the regulations and how much we've advanced, the United States, like we get blamed a lot for like being the country that has like the most like businesses and we're creating the most havoc on the environment, whatnot. But we actually have like the most regulations. I mean, if you want to have a discussion about major countries who are like destroying the environment, why are they not talking or like blaming China? They never talk about China. Look at China's environment. I mean, they have pollution galore. Their water systems are disgusting. And look at India and look at their population density. They never talk about those countries, yet they always want to blame the United States.
Well, the argument would be that they say we want to set the precedent. We want to set an example for the rest of the world. But really, China and India have made tremendous leaps largely because they've been able to burn hydrocarbons and use energy in a cost-effective way. And that's amazing for people that live in India and China, getting out of poverty and all that kind of stuff.
Of course.
So, I mean, this is just so fundamental to getting out of poverty. Energy consumption is so fundamental for life expectancy, for quality of living, standard of living, quality of life. The reason we are, in large part, because we're able to live so amazing today, is because we're able to use cost-effective energy. And if they're actually going to take that away from us, you're going to see, if we stop burning hydrocarbons, life expectancy is going to collapse. Per capita income is going to collapse. There's like 3 billion people in the world right now that use less energy than the average American refrigerator. And those people are desperately unempowered. They're so like 50% of the world lives on less than $13,000 a year, and the average person in the world has about 5 times less energy consumption than the average American does. The average person. A lot of people are below that. So I mean, this is just it's ridiculous, and it's just totally anti-human and totally anti-capitalism and totally anti-human flourishing. So we need to completely reject this nonsense.
Yeah, and not to mention, this is just another way for them to expand their power, expand their influence, because they're able to grow government in this manner and grow what it does, grow what it dictates people can do. So if they're outlying industries and giving mass subsidies to their friends in big solar, big wind, then that's an advantage for them. That keeps them in power, and that's just another voting block that they can have.
Yeah, solar and wind energy per unit of energy are subsidized far more than hydrocarbons are. So I think this is really important to understand. Despite the fact that solar and wind are subsidized to the degree that they are, we still largely every developed country burns hydrocarbons. So it's really the only way to have cost-effective energy in almost every circumstance. You look at Europe and Germany; they spent over 500 billion euros on their energy, on their green energy agenda, and it's blown up in their faces. I mean, the cost of energy is going up. The cost of energy should be going down. And in California, over the last 10 years, in real terms, the cost of energy has gone up. This should never happen. And we should be getting, every year, the cost of energy should be going down and down and down, especially over 10 years. And because of these radical, just ridiculous policies, the cost of energy is going up. I mean, it's all ridiculous.
Yeah, it's just another way to put more regulations and more control from the government over, people's lives and people's flourishing.
Yeah, I mean, it's really sad, frankly, because this is literally one of the key factors of how we get out of poverty, how we're able to have the life expectancy we have, how we're able to have the standard of living that we have today. And if they actually take this away from us, it's going to have horrific economic and horrific economic consequences and quality of life consequences. So I think it's really important to look at this from a pro-human perspective, because from a pro-human perspective, we're doing better than ever. And that's largely because we're able to burn hydrocarbons, and especially when it comes to climate safety. there's no climate crisis. This is a climate renaissance.
Yeah.
We've never been safer from the climate, ever. Think about that. And actually, I think this is important to understand. You're more likely to die of cold than of heat. So like significantly more likely to die of cold and heat. And most of the warming is happening in very cold areas. So it's actually a little bit warmer in colder areas. So it's concentrated in those areas where it's actually very dangerous. So I think this is just a no-brainer. Also, the more carbon we emit, the more photosynthesis happens. This is very good for plants. It's very good. It's just, it's not to say that there aren't any negative effects. We are impacting the climate. There is changing of the climate, but clearly it's for our benefit, and it's very good for us. The air is cleaner than it ever has been. The water is cleaner than it ever has been. So I mean, really, this is just amazing. We should be in love with the fact that we could burn hydrocarbons.
I mean, yeah, you're so right. The way that we're living in our quality of life right now is because of all these technological advances and how we've interacted with our natural resources to the point where we can survive it at such a flourishing way.
All of these machines are mostly they're possible because we're able to burn hydrocarbons. Mostly, that's how we're able to do this in a cost-effective way. Industrial, practices. It's because these machines that we use for slave labor, we burn hydrocarbons. We don't. Human history is a example of just really horrible quality of life, very low energy consumption. And you're just relying on your own energy for the whole day to get you to just be alive, right? And a lot of people didn't produce enough to survive. Now we produce way more than we need, and that's because we're able to, in large part, burn hydrocarbons and use capital equipment to do stuff for us. I'm sure we all got here because we were, we used a machine to get here, right? And would you guys want to walk? I mean, I wouldn't. I mean,
No.
think about all the things that we use that we burn hydrocarbons for, cooking. It's just, I'd like these climate activists to just go and try and not use hydrocarbons, and they can't use solar panels either if they do that, or wind, because that's the only way that's possible is by burning hydrocarbons.
Yeah, exactly.
So they couldn't use those either.
Yeah.
So just try and live without it and see how amazing your life is. You're going to quickly find out that it's horrible. It's a horrible life. We don't want to go back. We're living much better today now because we're able to do that.
So I guess you could say we're not going back.
Yes, we're not going back
No.
to the days where we're barely surviving before the Industrial Revolution, before capitalism. We actually had wind energy. We used wind energy. You saw productivity go up a little bit in the 1500s. We were able to. So you see productivity go up a little bit, and then it's just this massive spike up in the Industrial Revolution when we started burning hydrocarbons and using cost-effective energy. It just exploded our standard of living. We were in life expectancy, all of it just skyrockets. Protection from the climate, it all skyrockets. It's amazing to look at. But unfortunately, these people, you read what they put out, and they never address the massive benefits we get from being able to burn hydrocarbons. You could just look. You could look at it from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change at the United Nations. They've written thousands of pages on it. They never once mention the amazing benefits we have from hydrocarbons. It's amazing. I look at this stuff. It's like, how could you not acknowledge this? So our impact has been amazing. We're far better off today than we ever have been, and that's in large part because we burn hydrocarbons in a cost-effective way.
Yeah, and we're not building power plants anymore, so that is driving up the cost.
Yeah.
We need more supply, and we don't have that supply. But you were saying?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say this is like a small yet important side note, especially being pro-human. I mean, they want to turn towards solar panels and wind, which also it's you need constant sunlight and the good wind for that to even be working. But in order to manufacture those things and to build those things, they're building them over in China, which they're using child slavery to build them. So it's just an ongoing issue of just things that just don't make sense to implement and to grow. You know what I mean? Why would you want to grow this business that is using child labor in a developing country? Why would you want to do that?
I think we need to focus. Yeah, there is questionable labor practices for sure that have been in China to develop this, solar and wind energy. But clearly, we have cost-effective energy, and we're getting better and better at it with the fracking revolution that we have now. That's one of the major things helping the United States economy is the fracking revolution that's going on. Back in 2007, we had to import a lot of our energy, but now we're a net exporter of energy, and a lot of that is because of the fracking revolution we're happening now. And in spite of the radical policies from Obama and the Biden administration when it comes to these types of issues, we're still doing great. So I'd like to see I'd like to see us embrace fossil fuels. I'd really like to see the culture embrace it. I really think that they're looking at it from the wrong lens, though. They have to look at it from the standpoint of, are humans flourishing? And then the answer is just so obvious.
Yeah.
And so and these really speculative models, we could, when you say like the sea levels are rising, and you could look at it and they're expected to rise very moderately, and they're rising about where they have been for many years now. We're able to, like in the Netherlands and in Norway, they're a lot of their population is below sea level, and they're able to still be there because they could use machines to create dams and all that, or dikes and all that stuff. And dams and dikes, and they're able to to circumvent that because they're able to use machines which burn hydrocarbons. A lot of the reason why we're able to protect ourselves from this stuff is because we burn hydrocarbons. So the whole thing is just ridiculous to say we need net zero emissions. That'll virtually completely eliminate fracking. So she's kind of she's still kind of pro getting rid of fracking just later on. It's if she actually goes through on this, which she has supported the Green New Deal, that would virtually completely eliminate fracking. So she's really against fracking still. So I think that's really important to understand.
And I think also the year mark should be alarming to people too. 2050 seems like it's kind of like a distant future, but for those effects to happen, it's very close.
Yeah. No, it would take drastic changes to the infrastructure of the country, and I don't think people quite understand quite how much money that would take in economic capital. It would just be a disaster. You'd see it would just be a horrific disaster. I'd like to think that's not going to happen, but I mean, they've won a lot of stuff over in Texas and California, throughout the European Union. There's been a lot of countries that unfortunately have, governments that have spent so much money subsidizing this, including the United States government. And it's just unreliable, not cost effective, not energy. That's what it is. And, so yeah, I mean, we've had this in the 15th century. Photovoltaic practices started in 1839, by the way. Or not the 16th century, but photovoltaic practices started in the 19th century in 1839. And, when we got oil, we quickly found out that was a better way of using energy to power our machines. But yeah, we could talk about this for so long.
Right. Otherwise, solar would be the leading provider of power for us. It would, if it's more profitable, if it's more efficient, then that's what's going to succeed. And it's not. So given that, of course it's not in the lead. Of course it's not there. And we're not building more power plants, very harmful to the country. Because we're not doing that, we could have much cheaper energy prices if we did. And as J.D. Vance said in the debate, we could have cleaner environment if we onshored manufacturing from China to the United States. But the climate activists don't want to talk about that because they're afraid to criticize China and India and these other countries.
But I'd say I would actually disagree with Vance because that actually allows us to have such efficient machines, partially because we trade with other countries. So it makes us more efficient here, and the more efficient the machines are, the less hydrocarbons we actually have to burn. So we actually emit less carbon because of that. So I think that when it comes to this, we're just going to get better